Hello, my name is Paul Rogney, and I'm the host of the Drumming News Network. In recent years, handcrafted cymbals seem to be a growing market. Rob Cook of Rebeats, author and creator of the Chicago Drum Show, believes that handcrafted cymbals are the next frontier, much like the interest in custom drum manufacturing that took place in the early 1990s. May 20th and 21st of this year at the Chicago Drum Show, you will be able to meet and experience presentations on cymbal making from each of these cymbal craftsmen, and on the 21st, a panel of all the craftsmen together. The series of interviews that I am doing are literally a discovery as it happens. I purposely did not do I hardly did any research on each of these cymbal smiths ahead of time. I've custom built drums and my own drum hardware, but the idea of cymbal crafting is something that seems part voodoo, craftsmanship, and passion. Three things that I have no interest in when it comes to actually creating a cymbal. In each of these interviews, we get to see each of their own personalities, and like a true artist, even with similar approaches, their outcomes are completely different. On this episode, I speak with Mike Mongiello of Mongiello Cymbals. Mike believes the most important element in any craft is the human one. That's why every one of his instruments are made by hand from start to finish, in a single artisan setting, ensuring the highest attention to detail and quality. From carefully curated production models to custom instruments made from the ground up, Mike will help you find the sound you are looking for. No cymbal will leave his shop until he'd be proud to play it on his own set. This is going to be a very informative and interesting episode. So, let's get on with it. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with me about the Chicago Drum Show coming up and to talk more about being a cymbal smith. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes, exciting. So before we get going and go down the road with about what you do, I'd like to find out a little bit about your history. Can we talk a little bit about what got you into drumming in the first place?
Drumming itself?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when I was about 18 or 19, I started kind of late. My cousin, who was like a little child at the time, got like one of those little tiny kid drum kits,
Mm-hmm.
and for Christmas. So it was out by the tree, and I happened to be spending Christmas with their family, and I we were starting a punk rock band, and I was going to be the singer. And I sat down at this little drum kit for whatever reason and started messing around. And I was just like, "No, I'm the drummer." And I went out and I had a crappy job, and I bought a crappy drum kit and started playing drums. So
That's fantastic. So did you continue pursuing the punk style of music, or did you get
yeah,
into other
most
styles?
most of the music that I played was I don't have a chance to play much anymore. I was in a band last year, and the guys that I play with pretty often asked me to do a band again, and I was like, I don't have the time, and I don't want to do it unless I'm like really into it,
Mm-hmm.
like able to commit to it. But I usually did a lot of punk rock and a lot of metal and a lot of like proggy stuff, and I was in like a jazz cover band for like a night. I faked jazz for a night,
Yeah.
and I played some like weirdo stuff and improvisational music. But yeah, all kinds of stuff over the years. So
Okay.
yeah,
Did
I'm
you?
still just as good as I was when I sat down at the little kids drum kit. So I don't, it never really turned out the rock star thing. So
So early on, who were some of your influences that kind of like originally inspired you to continue playing and kind of
as a
foster that?
kid, even before I started playing drums, it was probably Keith Moon because
Hmm.
I was a big Who kid. But when I was the age I was to start playing, it was like the guys playing for Bad Religion, like Bobby Scher and Brooks Wackerman. It was around the time that Brooks Wackerman had joined Bad Religion, and everybody was just like, "Who is this guy? Jeez, he's crazy!" And
Hmm.
I was super into that. Tommy Aldridge, who was like out on the road with like an iteration of Thin Lizzy at the time, I
Okay.
think. And like my family's big Thin Lizzy people, so I was super into that. And then when I got a little bit older, uh, Phil Selway from Radiohead is a big one for me. um, and Bron Daler from Mastodon, and and then of course jazz is like a thing that I love listening to, and uh, I like listening to a lot of different kinds of jazz drummers and stuff like that. But it's almost not worth saying because it's the same people that everybody else likes. It's like, Elvin Jones and Tony Williams and Eric Harlan and Brian Blade, so
Right.
it's the same crazy, insane master drummers that everybody else likes. So,
Well, it makes sense though, I mean, because it's like they are the people who we go back to find out, essentially the forefathers are of modern jazz. So,
yeah.
and approach to drumming.
I think these days that I gain the most amount of inspiration in terms of looking at drums musically, not as a maker of an instrument, is the drummers that I encounter now, because now I encounter like very high level drummers all the
Hmm.
time, and not necessarily famous drummers, but professional players who are very very good. My assistant apprentice Trevor is a spectacular drummer. It's just like super fun to watch him play. And one of my artists is my demo guy, and Joe Baldacci. He's like awesome, like super class and like really really good. I work with Eric Binder is one of my artists, and he's just like bops hard and
Mm.
is amazing on the drums and that sort of thing. I
Yeah.
just like when somebody comes to the shop and sits down behind my kit that I don't know how to play and rips, and that's inspiring to me.
Well, it's fantastic. So, what really got you into crafting cymbals?
I'm a gear junkie,
Hmm.
and as I find is often the case with people who aren't. I mean, I'm an okay drummer, but I find a lot of us okay drummers are like super into nice gear. Uh, and like, so I was always like looking for a cool snare drum, or like, what's my cool kit gonna be? And every band I was ever in, I wanted a new setup, so I'd trade something in and get
Hmm.
something else, different toms or different heads or different cymbals, and I always loved cymbals. And I always found myself like playing cymbals that were super not appropriate for what I was playing, and just because I liked trying different stuff, and I owned lots of cymbals, and I started trying to find someone to do custom stuff for me. And I I researched a couple of companies, like I bought some Saludas, and I kind of, looked around at some people who were doing custom stuff. And through that, I sort of found Matt Bettis and Spitzkino, and or Spizzacino, I guess, and uh, Lance Campo, like watching the Cymbal Project videos and stuff like that. And I was like, oh wow, there's people that do it, huh? That actually are doing the Turkish thing. And I was watching the Turkish hammering videos, and it made me interested. So I just kind of lurked on the internet for like 2 years
Hmm.
and just studied a lot of pictures and watched a lot of videos, and the obsession didn't go away. It was not like a phase of like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I was kind of also toying around with the idea of making drums, but the cymbal thing never went away. So eventually I just ordered a hunk of steel and an angle grinder. I'd never used tools. I'm a nerd. I play video games, so it's
Okay.
like I had never used power tools or anything. I just ordered an angle grinder and a hunk of steel and a couple ball peen hammers, and started cutting stuff up until it sort of looked like the pictures that I was looking at, and I started working.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I've learned that from a lot of you cymbal artisans that you really started off by literally exploring, and that was kind of like your driving focus. It's like you didn't have a vision for it, you just kind of went for it. You're like, I want to do this. I just want to try it out.
Mhm.
But you started with stainless steel before you got into brass.
I did, yeah. So the reason I did that was because I knew how to get it, and at the time it was really affordable.
Hmm.
Stainless steel is a lot more expensive now that raw materials all over the world of every kind have gone up. But at the time, I had a steel manufacturing plant, 20 miles away from my apartment, and I could order discs and at the thickness that I wanted, and it gave me a chance to sort of learn how to, or teach myself to a point, how to hammer metal, because I didn't have a lathe or anything. So
Mhm.
I could teach myself or try to figure out what was going on for less money without ruining like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of raw material. So I did
Mhm.
that for close to a year before I reached out to a foundry in Turkey and started ordering bronze. Yeah.
Did you get any training from that company in Turkey?
No, no. So with the Turkish guys, I've always just ordered material.
Hmm.
I have received training. I uh, I I spent a little bit of time with Nicky Moon, who's a great guy, and he, we sort of buddied up a little bit at the beginning of my run, and I wound up learning a little bit of hammering for a day with him, and that was like super eye-opening, which was amazing. And I was as I started posting that I was working with Bronze, Francisco Domene in Brazil reached out to me and asked if I had any questions, which was a little bit intimidating because I know he had already trained Nick and he had trained PGB in Canada, and I so I was like, oh, I'm not going to bother this guy. He's busy, But he kept asking, and I asked him some technical questions, and after that, he said, well, come to Brazil. So I went down right before the pandemic started. I almost got stuck there actually, uh, and uh, and spent like 10 days training with him, um, which was great because then I could sort of fuse the exploratory stuff that I was doing with something a little more traditional.
Hmm.
And I actually wound up going back. I was there in November for 3 weeks, and that was great. So it's always good to see them. And that time it was less training and more. I just worked in the factory for 3 weeks, which was awesome.
Okay, so I've heard him referenced a couple times, like by Nikki and some other people that got training from him. Where did he receive his training, or did he just
He
kind of
was
develop it?
trained by Mustafa Daril in
Oh,
Turkey.
okay.
Um,
And
so
can you
he
explain who Mustafa Daril is to people who are listening?
Sure. Mustafa Deril is he does Samson cymbals, which is one of the Turkish cymbal brands. He's I don't want to not say a fact, so I just want to make sure. I believe that he did the Byzance line for Meinl, and I also believe he did the original version of the Master Series for Paiste. Um, and and then he has his company in Turkey, and he's one of the Drill brothers. So
But isn't there a drill line of symbols too?
yeah, so Drill, so there are several Drills, just like there are
Okay,
several Istanbuls and that sort of thing. It's the same as Zildjian and Sabian. They all split off and everything like that.
okay.
So there's several Drills.
But as I understand it, the drill family, going back several hundred years, learned the craft from the Zildjian family. Is that correct?
My history doesn't go back that far. Nick
Okay.
Nick is the guy to ask. He's very very good with his history, but I do know that all that the K Istanbul factory. Once that split happened, everybody went in all different directions and wound up with Diril and Bosphorus and Istanbul and all
Okay.
that sort of thing. And then they all split, and it's all this little tree of companies. Yeah.
Okay. So it's just kind of interesting. It seems like as recently as like 10, 15 years ago, a lot of these lower level companies would show up that are, growing now. When I say lower level, that's not an insult. It's just like there's a monopoly by the big three, four cymbal manufacturers, and nobody else could get in. And it seems like there's a lot more opportunity now. I think about 10 years ago is when that started changing. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with more informed consumers, and just shying away from people want handmade stuff, you
Mm.
know, and of course there's the fetishism of the Istanbul Ks, and that sort of thing. So as soon as there's Turkish handmade stuff readily available in the United States, that's where the brain goes. And kind of the same thing with us guys sometimes, the indie guys. People want interesting handmade instruments that have interesting artistic tones. Um, they're not good for everything. I still think that machine made cymbals or like very bright cymbals or very heavy cymbals have a place and are totally valid. I think that there's no such thing as a bad cymbal.
Mhm.
There's just cymbals that are bad for situations, you
Okay.
know. So, but I think there's a lot of people that are super into that old school sort of dirty sound, a little complexity, not necessarily perfect, and so that started getting a lot more popular, I think. And I think Meinl had a lot to do with it too, because once Meinl put out the Bison stuff, people went nuts for the dark hand hammered stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how how familiar are you with the history of Turkey and the development of the shape of the symbol? I was wondering if you are very familiar with that. If you could talk to us about that, because that's one thing I've not broached upon with anyone else is how important Turkey is to the symbol craftsman or symbol community through
Yeah.
design and material choice.
So I'm again, my history is not super great,
Hmm.
but it's I mean it's obvious it's quintessential. The like Constantinople, Armenia, Turkey, modern day Istanbul is huge for symbols because that's where the Western symbol was like created,
Hmm.
and the development of it, and even with the Zildjian guys going into Canada and Boston, um, the jazz symbols that everybody was into were still being made in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and being imported, I believe, by Gretsch.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I mean, it's incalculable. We wouldn't have that, you know. It's just as important as modern Zildjian or 20th century, Industrial Revolution Zildjian or Sabian or any of that stuff. I mean, China has a lot to do with it too.
Hmm.
Obviously, China has a huge history of bronze and brass instruments and gongs and the lion cymbals and even some companies doing Western cymbals as well. But I think that I mean, you can't. It's just you can't take Turkey away from it.
Right.
Turkey figured it out. You know. So
And they're playing a very important role in the next evolution of symbol craftsmanship. So it's a melting pot, really, in my
I
opinion.
agree. I agree. I agree. And I mean, I don't. The thing that's funny about it is that, and not to take anything away from the Turkish cymbal makers, but like um, a lot of it is just kind of being pumped out. Like I've seen some really nice Turkish cymbals, like modern Turkish cymbals, and I've seen some duds. And uh, so it's still companies that are that are cranking stuff out the same way any of the big companies are. So you're going to get good stuff, and you're going to get bad stuff. The quality control and the consistency with some of the companies, even some of the bigger Turkish companies, is not as good as you'd see with some of the companies stateside or in Germany or Switzerland or Canada or anything like that. But still really good stuff.
So I want to talk a little bit about the availability of materials. So I heard that um, brass and bronze is a little bit more difficult to get a hold of now. Obviously, it's significantly more expensive. But there's a concern that going forward, it might be very short in availability. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about it. I've certainly thought about it.
Okay.
It's definitely possible. I mean, the thing is, if the Turkish guys just decide one day they're not going to sell it to us anymore, or they can't, then we're
Right.
all in trouble. Um, but so far, I've been affected in it only in that the material is a lot more expensive.
Okay.
You know, so I hope. that we've still got some time with it being readily available. I know that some of us are working on uh, experiments with casting on our own, and I have a good relationship with Francisco at the Domene Cymbals factory in Brazil. The only reason that I don't just import Brazilian bronze at this point is because we've run into a lot of really costly problems in terms of importing from Brazil. So it's not even really on the U.S. side; it's on the Brazil side, and it's made it like prohibitive. Um,
So could you
so,
talk a little bit about that?
the last time I was in Brazil, I sort of sorry if this is a secret, Francisco. We we talked a little bit about trying to get bronze here for everybody, and even went as far as to be thinking about like doing a small tempering oven in my facility, which is really just a garage,
Hmm.
just so that we could import like a lot of it,
Hmm.
and then retemper it so that it's fresh when it gets ordered from people, because bronze becomes brittle as it ages, so you want to hammer your blanks as fresh as you can.
Okay.
So by re-annealing, retempering the bronze, you bring it back to that fresh, soft state that's easily workable. Um, but we go back and forth a little bit about it. We'll see if we're able to do any of that stuff in the future. But for now, it's proven very costly, to a point where it would probably be a loss
Okay.
more than anything else. So it doesn't make a lot of sense when right now at the moment everybody can get stuff pretty fast and pretty fresh from Turkey. So hopefully we'll see. Hopefully in the next couple of years, because the Brazilian stuff is really good.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Is it how they mix it, or what makes it good?
There's just a real focus on quality control.
Okay.
I saw it myself, just stopping production just to make sure everything is aligned correctly for an hour and a half, or just making sure that every ingot meets the standards
Hmm.
that they want it to be at before it moves on to rolling. And at every step of the process, they're just checking to make sure that they have a piece of metal that they're proud to have. So
Okay.
I was impressed.
No, that's fantastic. It's just so many steps into not only symbol making but also just getting a material. you
Yes,
know, and like with this world going on, I think I've kind of alluded to this before. It's amazing how right now, with all the expenses going up for materials and taxes and the special metals tax and stuff like that, as fluctuating as it is, that so far most companies haven't increased their prices yet. So, um, they're really starting to have to start eating that cost. My question is, how long is that going to go on for, and at what point? How did they average it out so they can maintain their business currently,
sure.
and get to a point where they're going to have to either price themselves out of a good portion of the market, or continue to take a loss. So it's a really interesting time. It's not only music; it's kind of every company,
Yeah,
every industry. But
absolutely.
we're focused on music, so that's what's the most important.
Well, with and I'm just a guy in a garage, so I don't want to try to sound like an expert in anything that I'm not. But um, given the size and scale of the say the larger cymbal companies, so you take your Zildjian or your Sabin or your Paiste, you have to think about where most of their big sales are coming from. Their
Mm,
their lower their lower end lines, where it's brass or B8 cymbals, and that's where they're making most of their profit. At least that's what I'm led to believe. So it's a little bit easier, I guess, on the back end to have their higher end stuff, and not raise prices too much. Now, I mean, I have seen, the price of high level B20 cymbals has gone up.
oh, okay.
Um,
It's been a while for me.
it's not huge, but it definitely has gone up.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, a lot of the indie Smith guys, like pricing is a big topic that we talk about. because we have to think about kind of just what you said, you have to not scare everybody away, but you still have to make some profit on what it
Hmm.
is that you're doing.
Exactly. And the craftsmanship level that you guys are putting into it, especially with some of the symbols I've seen by you, is you're paying for that hands-on quality, and you're making sure you get a true instrument. So
Well,
it's worth that additional money. But yeah, like you said, you got to be careful about that because you're putting a lot of time into it. I mean, how long does it take you to make a symbol? Let's say.
that's a question everybody asks. It varies, you know.
Okay.
I mean, like I could probably make a 22-inch ride in an hour or two.
Okay.
But it's probably more like 4 hours over the course of 2 days.
Okay.
In the case of the symbol series that I put out last month, that are sort of informed by the old stamp Istanbul K symbols, those take about a week, about a work week, because I form the bells by hand, and then there's secondary hammerings, and there's patina process that takes about 4 days because I'm stupid and I just landed on a patina process that I like that happens to
Mhm.
take that long instead of one that takes 35 seconds or something like that.
But that's your signature, man. That's your
Yeah.
signature. So what series? What's the name of that series?
That's called the Prestige series.
Okay.
I worked on that with Dr. Eric Binder. I flew to Chicago and checked out his old stamp collection and sort of just combined elements of what I liked of those symbols that I saw into this stuff, and we named
Okay.
it after the club, the Prestige.
Okay.
So, yeah,
And you also have another series called the Workhorse. Can you talk about that series?
sure. The Workhorse series was sort of my like this is my traditional line thing. I wanted it to be accessible, handmade instruments for everybody, every kind of drummer. I'm currently in the process of expanding it past base models so that there's something for everybody. The stuff that I put out was sort of in the middle, and then I'm going to put out some darker stuff and some heavier, brighter stuff with bigger bells for everybody. And the idea was to sort of blend some of that uh, shimmery A602 kind of vibe with something more like a Turkish traditional cymbal.
Hmm.
So like a modern sound that's still got some of the dirt and complexity of being handmade. And I really like those. Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of you guys offer, like a ride, or like a crash ride, but you don't really have a series of crash symbols specifically. Is there any particular reason for that?
I do crashes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
right here.
yeah.
Duh.
But
I see him. Okay.
I think that the reason, like a lot of guys do rides because that's our bread and butter.
Okay.
Most people that are coming to, at least in my, again, I can't speak for anybody else, but in my
Mhm.
experience, most people are coming to me as an artisan cymbal maker for a ride cymbal.
Okay.
They're looking for a primary voice. And then I sell crashes and hi-hats and flat rides and all that sort of stuff and chinas or whatever anybody wants. But the main focus is always rides,
Okay.
you know.
And hi-hats, I'm assuming, are this a quick second and then effect
Yeah,
symbols.
yeah, I'd say hats and rides, and then from there on it's a mix. Yeah.
So your series, the Avari,
I guess if you live in Brazil, it's Avare.
Avari. Okay.
Avare. I
Okay.
say Avare because I'm an idiot from Philadelphia. Uh, but yeah, so that's sort of the darker, drier cousin of the Workhorse series. I
Okay.
named it after the city that Francisco lives in.
Okay.
And it starts off as a Turk and then gets a sort of like a satin abrasion finish, and I lathe the edge and do a spiral of lathing down the body. It gives it sort of a nice combination of lathed and unlathed elements so that you get a nice sort of shimmery, silvery sound, but it's still nice and controlled, good stick, low pitch, kind of gritty. Yeah.
They're very beautiful symbols.
Thank you.
And you have your own signature look. Every craftsman does have their own look to them. It's just pretty remarkable that it comes down to everyone's own special talents to really create something special. And yeah, in this series too, you have in crashes, you have 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, thin, medium, and medium thin. So I guess with that too, since you're a metal guy, as in like metal music, punk
Yeah.
rock, do you have a cymbal line, or is there a way to craft a cymbal that could be more durable, do you think, for people that hit hard and not
Yeah,
necessarily
I mean,
appropriately?
it's really about picking your weight and your bell, picking a cymbal that has the correct anatomy
Hmm.
for louder playing. And a lot of that has to do with the player, you know. I mean, I've had rock drummers ask that too before, like, how durable are your cymbals? I said they're durable as any other B20 cymbal. I said, do you break Zildjians? Do you break Sabians? Like, you'll probably break mine.
Hmm.
Like, it's, you know, uh, I think something that I and several of the other cymbalsmiths do is try to educate and inform the consumer to try and get your clients to understand how it works and how cymbals really work instead of it just being like this one's shiny or like this one's got a big bell or like this one's inside out or whatever, you know, like
Hmm.
this one's a clap stack, you know, like that's cool. We like, you know, that stuff's cool, but really it's about like trying to get your heavy guys to maybe go a little thinner
Hmm.
and maybe understand the way that they're hitting it is inappropriate and is probably choking the cymbal out rather than allowing it to cut through the mix the way they want it to. Get your jazz guys to understand that they actually want a slightly heavier cymbal. They don't need it to be this paper thin thing because then the stick sound isn't going to translate to the audience and you're going to
Okay.
wash out. Have a slightly heavier cymbal so that you can get the sound to translate to the audience the way you want it to, you know.
Is there a way to even craft a cymbal that could be more durable and sound good in your opinion? In your opinion, I can't even talk today. In your opinion,
When you say durable, do you just mean heavier, or do you
uh,
like what do you mean?
I'm talking like if somebody's hitting it wrong. So what I used to do is I used to have my cymbals way up here, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then I'd hit it, and then undoubtedly I'd hit the edge of it, right?
yeah.
And that was what would start a crack process.
Sure.
And then a buddy of mine who was a representative for a cymbal company said, you got to lower your cymbals and you got to hit it with a swishing motion
Yeah.
in the bow portion of the cymbal, and it'll last a long time. You can hit it hard,
Yes.
but it'll be appropriate. It'll make it live longer. Um, and I've been able to develop that technique a little bit better, right? But I still sometimes go through cymbals because I just hit so hard, and I'm trying to reduce that. But I still, I play the drums hard, um, and I've often just wondered, is there a way to, due to the material, is there even a way to make a cymbal sound, still sound good, but even last longer?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I never really thought about it from that angle. You know, to me, it's really a technique thing because I play really heavy and I've played really thin cymbals in heavy music and not broken cymbals. And I think some of it has to do with how you've got it on the stand, how you're hitting it, how it's angled, what kind of sticks you're using, all that sort of thing. I think the only cymbal I've ever broken was a China, and it was like a Wuhan that
Mhm.
had the cup thing, and they break. You know, like if you're
Right.
slamming them in a metal band, they're gonna break. But yeah, outside of dropping something, I've never uh, cracked a cymbal from playing. And so, I
I'm
mean,
embarrassed.
it could also be a matter of like uh, switching your alloy to B8 or B10 or something like that. And, you know, some companies make really good B8 and B10 cymbals, and a lot of the cymbal smiths will modify B8, B10, B12 cymbals to make them sound more interesting and unique. Um, it's really just a matter of taste. But I still think that there's as long as you are aware that if you're playing, here's how I think of it. If
Mhm.
your playing is comfortable and produces the sound that you want,
Mhm.
and you're breaking cymbals, just keep breaking them, I guess.
It's
Because
expensive. No, I look at, I look at your cymbals, and man, they're beautiful, and I've listened to a number of them, and they sound fantastic. And it's something that I'd have to change my technique to use because it's more of it's a real refined instrument. and I wouldn't want to make an investment like that and break it. You know? So,
Sure, sure. And I think that's the challenge for us getting into selling stuff to drummers who aren't jazz players,
mhm.
you know. But I assure you, my last band was a doom band, and
Oh,
all of my cymbals I made
mhm.
in that band, and I didn't break any of them, and I hit them really hard, and they
Wow.
sounded good, and they were very loud.
No, when you hit
So
them, do you hit them with this with a swoosh motion too,
when
or
I'm
how do you do it?
playing rock stuff, yeah, I kind of like this, you know, little side swipe. And I go for the edge with crashes, you know,
Okay.
unless I'm like crash riding and you're digging into the bow. Yeah, you know, I have no technique, so you know, if I if I'm hitting them wrong, I probably am hitting them wrong.
You know what the
So
weird thing is on the flip side, I hit drums really, really hard. And again, I'm changing my technique now, so I don't, you know. But I hit my bass drum so hard I actually break the front heads. And I
wow,
don't break the bass drum head, which is weird because you'd almost think that I'd be going through my bass drum head so much quicker. It's a weird thing. And then I have not broken one beater. And I always hear about people breaking the footboards of the pedals and the beater, and I'm like, that's the only thing I don't break. It's kind of weird. Anyways, technique, like you said. So,
man, you guys are all breaking stuff. I don't know. Stop breaking stuff.
dude, I'm metal. I was born metal. You know,
Yeah,
you don't hit the drum head. You're trying to hit the bottom head. The top one's
yeah,
in the
you
way.
aim for the floor, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Okay.
And I think that that comes down to, you know, when you're playing heavy music, that's part of the performance, you know? Like
Yeah.
anybody with lots of technique or anything like that, or wants to be snooty about how you're supposed to play something, like
Hmm.
that's how you play heavy music sometimes, you know? It's a performance. You're performing on an instrument. And to be fair, like, you know, a lot of cymbals at that volume level, it's really just, do you have enough high end and usable mid range to cut through the mix? You know, like,
Hmm.
do you really need a super complex, you know, dirty sounding instrument? No. But you can get some of the subtleties and stuff like that of a handmade instrument at a high volume, but not the same way as a medium or low volume setting.
Right. I'm assuming your cymbals would come alive either in a jazz club that's really quiet or in a recording because I think you have so many
Depending
dynamics.
depending on the cymbal.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, like if you order a workhorse cymbal in a medium or heavy weight, it's gonna perform at on a, higher pitched level. You know, it's going to perform like a rock cymbal.
Okay.
Uh, but you know, my target audience most of the time are jazz players, studio players, um, uh, funk players, that sort of thing, who want the lower dynamics. So a lot of the cymbals that I put up or sell are thinner. So that's how they're gonna that's how they're going to translate. But yeah, just you know, make them heavier, make them with a bigger bell, make them with a higher profile, and they'll definitely perform in a higher volume setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we talked earlier about bronze and whether it's going to be available forever or not. You're the only cymbal maker I've seen so far that's been experimenting with stainless steel, and it kind of makes me think that you're going to be offering a different kind of line of cymbal. Is that correct? At some point.
So what I will say is I'm certainly not the first person to do stainless steel. Nicky Moon makes really nice stainless steel cymbals,
Okay.
and he was making them before me. Um, and I know that Dave Collingwood experimented with steel a little bit in the beginning. There are a few people that were making some steel cymbals that sounded good. I generally speaking do not make stainless steel cymbals anymore unless
Oh.
someone
Okay.
special orders one. And even in that case, I tend to try to figure out why you want a stainless steel cymbal. Is it just because you want something funky? Have you ever played a stainless steel cymbal? Because it's very different than a bronze cymbal.
Hmm.
They're fragile in that they don't crack the way that a bronze cymbal will. They dent
Okay.
when you're making them at the weight, at the thickness that you need them to be to sound good. In my opinion,
Hmm.
without just sounding like a manhole cover or dead. They have to be very thin. So you have to make sure that whoever's going to pay the money to get them isn't going to destroy it after they hit it three times. Um,
Good point.
uh, and so for that, the main reason that I don't make steel anymore is because I don't like it as much as I like working with bronze. I
Hmm.
think that stainless steel sounds cool and it's valid. It's a valid voice as a cymbal and can be really cool and interesting. And I'm totally into making them if somebody wants me to. But it's more physically taxing than bronze. The thing with bronze is when you're hammering bronze, it your hammer bounces off of the metal if you have technique.
Hmm.
So I could sit in my shop and hammer for 5 or 6 hours, and I might be a little sore, like little sore muscles, and say like, okay, I definitely worked today, But if I hammered one stainless steel cymbal, I would feel it in my neck for a few days, because it's like gushy, like it doesn't bounce off, it like goes in, and all that force, it just travels back up through your arm and into your neck, and like you get to the point where you can't turn your neck properly, and like
Wow.
it's really unpleasant, and it's you know so that's the main reason why I don't do it anymore. um
I was just really interested to see on your YouTube. You have like a 30-inch
yeah.
stainless steel and
Mhm.
multiple different sizes, and they sound amazing. I didn't think that a stainless steel would sound like a real instrument. So
Thank
it's
you.
really exciting to see that. And I just
I
thought maybe that'd be an alternative to brass. If
I mean it's a cool alternative, but I don't think it's a replacement.
Okay,
And it's also the reason I made them that big is because they're kind of higher pitched, a little shrill and digital sounding,
okay,
a stainless steel. So I found that making them gigantic got them closer to that nice low pitched, like warm characteristic of a B20 cymbal. So
okay.
that's why I was doing this. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. If we run out of bronze, I guess I'll just work at McDonald's. That's
Well, AI and automation is taking away that too, so you're gonna be in trouble. You know,
uh, okay. Well,
I was joking. But what are your most common or most popular sizes of cymbal right now?
20 and 22-inch rides.
Okay.
I find that the the interest right now, the trendy interest is in odd size cymbals, 21, 23,
Hmm.
19, 15 hats, 17 hats, that sort of thing, 13 hats. And I actually did get a couple orders recently for some 21s and 23s, but in terms of who's actually pulling the trigger and purchasing, 20 and 22-inch rides, followed by 14-inch hi-hats and 18-inch crashes.
Okay, so all this pretty much standard sizes.
Yeah, the
Okay.
standard stuff. It's more about they want the vibe. Everybody kind of knows what the usable. Everything has kind of gone back into the standard sizes. I still make plenty of 24s. I
Hmm.
make big hi-hats. I have people order 22-inch crashes and stuff like that, and that stuff's super fun to make. But that's not normal.
Right.
I think the reason that I see funky stuff like that is because you usually come to someone like me or any of the other cymbal smiths because you want something out of the ordinary.
Hmm.
But yeah,
You also commission cymbals. Do you modify existing cymbals as well or no?
I do modify cymbals. I will be completely honest, and this is not a good sales pitch. I don't like doing modifications.
Okay.
Um, a lot of guys learned how to make cymbals by starting with modifications and then moving on to blanks. Whereas I started with stainless steel blanks and then moved to bronze blanks. And I didn't start modifying cymbals until probably it wasn't until after I got my lathe,
Okay.
and I worked for probably a year and a half without a lathe. And so it's not my favorite thing to do. It's super restrictive. It's super restrictive to my creative ability. It's super restrictive in that I think that people think you can do a lot more with mods than you actually can.
Hmm.
I think there's this conception that you can actually transform it into a completely different cymbal. And you with a modification, you have to work with what's there, and that it's often difficult to explain that to a client that like I can't turn this 70s A ping ride into an old K. I can't
Hmm.
I can't do that, it's not that I don't want to do that for you. It's just that I physically cannot.
Right.
uh, but you know, I'll do it. And especially certain, like if you've got a decent, like if it's in decent shape and it's not super crazy old, I'm into it. I kind of do the whole like I'll ask a lot of questions before I say yes to a modification. But
Okay.
I think that there are guys out there. Tim Roberts and Nicky Moon are much, much, much better at modifications than I am.
Okay.
And again, that is a terrible sales pitch. Um, so if you would like your cymbal to be modified with less quality than Nicky Moon or Tim Roberts, I would be happy to maybe do it for you. Maybe.
You know what this is what's so exciting about what you guys are doing here. There's such a camaraderie and you guys work together and you all have such respect for one another. And I think that is so exciting to see because in boutique drum set manufacturing, you don't see that. As I've talked to other cymbal makers, they've had have respect for each and one of you, and you all have your own style, sound, and technique. And if people are looking for specific sound, they can't achieve it. They're like, okay, I'll send them to you.
Yeah,
I think that's fantastic how that's working,
I
and that
agree.
you all define your specific skill set. It's really cool.
I think, it takes a particularly insane person to really do this.
Hmm.
Like if you do it on like a hobby level or you're just getting into it because you're interested in it,
Hmm.
maybe you're a normal person. Um, but I guarantee you that any of us that do this on any level outside of hobby level, it is an insane person. So we have the sickness. It's an addiction. It's an art. It's a compulsion. It's a thing that takes over your entire life.
Okay.
My life is so drastically different than it was when I started making cymbals. And,
Okay.
be, and a lot of that is because of being a cymbal smith. Um, I like it's the first thing I think about when I wake up. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed, and it's the I dream about it, and I talk about it with people that don't want to hear about it, and and that sort of thing. And I know that a
Great.
lot of the other guys are like that too. So uh, it's nice to have these other people around the world who care about it and are interested in it the same way you are. Yeah,
Well, one thing I was going to ask you is that, the wear and tear on your body, and your joints.
yeah,
Um, I've seen a lot of unrelated metalsmiths, like who custom, I'll say gas tanks for motorcycles or whatever. A lot of times they'll have this automated or pneumatic pinging, um, double ball kind of setup. Why do you guys not choose to do that, to implement that into your craftsmanship?
some of us do. Some of us do.
Okay.
And it's totally valid. I don't think that I think that there's such a craze of hand hammer, hand hammer, hand hammer. Like there are completely machine hammered cymbals that I think are great. There are completely hand hammered cymbals that I think are not very good. And like a power hammer is just another tool,
Hmm.
and it's totally effective and can help uh, set up a blank for the hand hammering process, or can make specific sounds when used complete for the entire process of shaping blank. Several of us have power hammers. I don't, probably for budgetary reasons at the moment. I don't have one. But there's nothing wrong with a power hammer, and I think in terms of longevity, I'm almost 40. You've got guys like Paul Francis is in his 50s. A lot of us are in our late 30s, early 40s. You know, we're we're doing something to our bodies that you shouldn't be doing. So uh, absolutely get a power hammer.
Well, no,
But I don't have the money to put it together, but I'll definitely have one at some point. Yeah.
yeah, because to me, as a cymbal-smith, I wouldn't consider that as a cheat for hand hammering because you're still gonna have to refine it with hand hammering.
I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think most of us did think it was a cheat when we
Okay,
first started because we all had that hand hammer is the special magic in our heads, just like a lot of consumers. It was done with a machine. It's not the same. It's
hmm
not good. That's not true. And as all of us get several hundred cymbals into our careers, you realize that just, you know, do you want to make cymbals every once in a while, or do you want to make cymbals for a living? Because
right.
if you want to make cymbals for a living, I've either got to, you know, as I grow, I have to decide like, do I need a combination of some amount of automation and or additional person or persons working with me in the shop so that so that I don't absolutely burn my body out. Yeah.
So here's my argument in favor of you guys. If you can spin a cymbal on a lathe, then using a ping hammer is no different.
I
Because
agree.
you still have to refine it, you still
I
have to tune
agree.
in, and
You
you
know
make it
what?
your own.
That's going to be my next series. I'm going to do the lathing by hand. I'm literally going to have my assistant just spin it while I'm jabbing it with a thing, and I could probably charge a lot of money for that,
Oh,
especially if we get some good video of it. Oh
mhm.
yeah.
And when it comes to, cut somebody's arm off, oof,
Oh yeah.
there you go. So we're coming up, on an hour, and
Okay.
I'm trying to be good about this, because I've enjoyed talking with each one of you. And there's so many cool areas that each one of you do, and especially with you. Again, I'm just mesmerized by your symbols, the way they look,
Thank you. Thank you. I
and
don't
so
ever get used to hearing that, but thank you very much.
yeah, of course. Well, see, the thing is, this is kind of a new thing for me because I've heard of people doing hand hammered things, but it's usually been like shaped plates
Yeah.
or minimal gongs, not these amazing gongs that people are doing.
Mhm.
And I always thought, like, different manufacturers don't make their gongs out of one sheet of piece of metal. They usually take pieces, shape them, weld them together. A lot of people don't know that. So when you hit it hard and it cracks in half, that's why. It's because it was never one piece of metal to begin with, including the flange area. And so I spoke to somebody about gong manufacturing years ago, and then just recently again. And it's unbelievable the craftsmanship that you guys do, the shaping of your cymbals, and making sure that you have the material thickness in the areas that it needs to be, like especially with the transition from the cup to the bow. That's an area that if it's not done right, they're going to be breaking all the time, just due to material inconsistencies and thicknesses. So I'm still mesmerized in how you guys get the bow in there, and that's just literally craftsmanship. But um, so with the event coming up at Chicago, you're gonna be one day you're gonna be presenting,
Mhm.
and then the next day you're gonna be on a panel. Do you have any idea what you're thinking about presenting this year at the Chicago show?
Uh, I've been mulling it over
Hmm
uh, about what I want to talk about because there's so much that I could talk about, and I kind of want to keep it. Um, I went back and forth. Do I want to talk about the industry, how the industry is going? Do I want to talk about uh, pricing or what? I mean, but that's kind of boring, and I'm sure that someone who, else who's there is going to articulate some of that stuff much better than I can. So I think what I'm going to talk about is my future, how I see cymbal smithing affecting me in a positive way because the future is uncertain right now, and I think we're coming to the boom. People keep talking about this cymbal boom that's happening, and I don't think it has happened yet. I think we're coming up to it, and I think that hopefully myself and some of these other people that will be in Chicago and some other very talented people around the world will rise up as consummate professionals, and then it'll sort of catch on in the way that knife making has, where you've got a lot of people that make knives, but
hmm
you've got some people that really make knives, or tattooing, where you've got a bunch of people with tattoo machines, and then you have professionals, and then you have superstar tattooers and stuff like that. I think it's kind of going to go that way. And uh, just thinking about how our businesses are going to grow in that way, and how we're going to grow as artisans, and how that's important to me. And the answer that I keep coming up with is that what's important to me is that I grow in a way that allows me to keep making cymbals, because really the most important thing is the physical act of making cymbals. So as long as I can keep doing that, and hopefully support myself in doing so, I'll do whatever it takes, and whether that means sharing the craft with other people, or working with a larger company, or just releasing more cohesive production models to become attractive to a wider audience. Whatever it takes to keep getting people interested in saying, "Hey, Mike, make a cymbal," because that's, at the end of the day, that's what I want to do, is sit down and make cymbals.
Man, that's fantastic. That's an incredible point about all of that. And it can also kind of maybe think a little bit about AI, and right now the concern about how much is AI going to be taking away from people working.
Mm-hmm.
And the one strong point that I see in AI being more of a part of our society is that the craftsmanship, whether you're a musician or an artist creating a cymbal or a drum, that's the areas that are going to thrive going forward. Because no matter what, you can have all the best machinery in the world, but you can't get that human touch. And again, with every one of you I've talked to, every one of your cymbals are so different, but yet they're the same alloy, and you've learned from the same people. It really comes down to your personal approach and your skill set. And I don't know. I think, yeah, like I said, I agree. I don't believe the boom has happened yet for cymbals, and I think it has yet to come around the corner. But it's exciting. It is such
Oh
an
yes,
exciting
it's very
thing to
exciting.
follow, to learn about. It's just really, really cool. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you for being interested. It's 4 years ago I was just sitting in a garage going, I don't know, maybe I'll hit this thing. And now I'm sitting here talking with you, and I'm super excited for Chicago. It blows my mind that I was asked by Rob and
Mhm.
everybody over there to even be included in a group of people that are talented in the way that the other people that will be on that panel are talented. So it's super exciting. It's going to be a great weekend.
Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure getting to know you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
This has been a production of the Drumming News Network. All rights reserved. All media is owned by the respective parties. This episode cannot be distributed or copied in any form. Please visit drummingNewsNetwork.com daily to keep up on all the latest drumming news. Copyright 2023.